It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to Truth Be Known, Truth Be Told, and to our first, what we like to call flipped classroom session for the Convene Canada 2024. We are super excited to bring this type of education and type of model to Convene Canada, and especially delighted that it's being led by two absolutely remarkable people who I am lucky enough to count as friends and colleagues. I'd like to take just a minute to introduce them, but I want to give them as much time as possible because I know they'll cover a ton. First is Nicole Salmon, founder of Boundless Philanthropy. Nicole brings extensive experience working in nonprofit charitable sector as a curious leader and fund development strategist. She's the founder of Boundless Philanthropy, a values-led consultancy committed to building and sustaining healthy, equitable, well-resourced, mission and community-focused nonprofit and charitable organizations. As a poet and a writer, she taps the power of words and language to stir emotions, liberate, connect, and bridge divides. And with her is Anika Allen, founder of the Empathy Agency. Anika is a Black Afro-Métis Canadian woman, a mama, and a descendant of the Underground Railroad. She considers herself a relationship builder, a stone catcher, a freedom fighter, a storyteller, and a leadership coach. As a lover of justice, she studies the causes of racial marginalization in philanthropy to understand how to restore relationships and improve the realities of racially oppressed people and their teams. As the founder of the Empathy Agency, Inc., she partners with multiracial leaders and groups to help them cultivate environments where everyone belongs. And I have had the privilege to work with both of them. They are remarkable people. The next thing I need them to do is write my bio because you're I will turn it over to Anika. Thank you again, both of you, for doing this with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Alice, for that
Thanks,
beautiful
Alice.
introduction. Hello, folks. Today, I want to just begin with a land acknowledgement. So today, I'm joining you from the unsurrendered and stolen shared territory of the Stolo Coast Salish peoples. I honor the survival of the indigenous nations of Turtle Island despite genocide. I grieve the theft and the subjugation of colonization and white supremacy culture. And as a forced inhabitant of these beautiful territories, I am challenged to confront the cost of living on this land with nowhere else to call home. Before we begin, we want to start with a somatic experience. This is how me and my sisters always engage with groups that we spend time with. In my grandmother's hands, Resma Menachem writes, "Few skills are more essential than the ability to settle your body. If you can settle your body, you are more likely to be calm, alert, and fully present, no matter what is going on around you." We believe a settled body enables you to harmonize and connect with others and the bodies around you, while encouraging those bodies to settle as well, and creating possible somatic alignment. We believe this is the best place for our stories to be shared and received. And so music is a conduit for settling bodies. And so we want to open up this session by listening to one of our favorite songs called River by Abeyi. As you're listening to this song, feel free to close your eyes, sway to the music, just allow the music to impact you and notice what is happening for you as you're listening to the song. And then we'll come back and tell you a little bit about the session.
wash my soul again. Carry away my dead leaves, let me baptize my soul with the help of your waters. Sink my pains and complaints, let the river take them, river drown them. My ego and my blame, let me baptize my soul with the help of your waters. Those old means, so ashamed, let the river take them, river drown them. Come to your river, I will come to your river, I will come to your river. Come to your river, wash my soul. I will come to your river, wash my soul. I will come to your river, wash my soul again. Carry away my old leaves, let me baptize my soul with the help of your waters. Sink my pains and complaints, let the river take them, river drown them. My ego and my blame, let me baptize my soul with the help of your waters. Those old me's so ashamed, let the river take them, river drown them. Come to your river, I will come to your river, I will come to your river. Come to your river, wash my soul. I will come to your river, wash my soul. I will come to your river, wash my soul again.
Wow. It doesn't matter how many times I hear that song, I find it extremely grounding and connects me in many ways to the present. As an immigrant from an island in the Caribbean, I acknowledge the colonial legacies of the land of my birth and this place called Turtle Island, that I now call home. Where I reside is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, and is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwe Chippewa peoples. The land that is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. I believe that reconciliation and mending relations with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples is our collective responsibility, requiring ongoing reflection and action. As my knowledge and awareness of its history grow, I honor the interconnectedness of our existence and assume the responsibility to share and be a good steward in helping to sustain this land for generations to come. Bell Hooks wrote, "The heart of justice is truth-telling, seeing ourselves and the world the way it is, rather than the way we want it to be." Why is truth feared? And for what purposes and to what end is truth hidden, omitted, and or manipulated in nonprofit and philanthropic spaces. These questions belie the prevailing and familiar Western-centered narrative of a benevolent sector driven by the good intentions of well-meaning people doing good deeds and deeply motivated to help the less fortunate and less privileged amongst us. But who are the celebrated benefactors, and who are the less fortunate and underprivileged beneficiaries? What image comes to your mind? And what picture does the existing narrative paint?
So in this session, we invite you to enter our space with humility, curiosity, and from an open and awake posture as we explore truth-telling in the nonprofit and philanthropic sectors. What truths must we know, confront, and tell to pursue, transform, and reshape a sector centered on racial and social justice so that we can realize its full and most meaningful potential? We will explore the power of narratives and their validity, pardon me, and the voices that shape narratives. Nicole and I will share excerpts from a portion of our writings in Collecting Courage, and ultimately, in this first part of our two-part workshop, we will end with 2 questions for consideration and meditation as preparation to receive and conceive new narratives in our 75-minute session at Convene Canada later this month in Vancouver. Sis, you're muted.
Thank you. There was a little noise in the background, so I just wanted to make sure. Microcosm of society, the fundraising landscape and philanthropic structures have excluded the voices of those pushed to society's margins, including and specifically the voices of Black people. Collecting Courage, Joy, Pain, Freedom, Love is the beginning of efforts to document and remedy that historic exclusion by unveiling unspeakable experiences and truths that coexist alongside a seemingly unchallengeable veneer of inherent goodness. Our book is a collection of personal experiences written by 15 accomplished Black individuals, mainly fundraisers, 5 from the United States and 10 from Canada. These personal testimonies document racism and the ways we try to cope, survive, and mute Black identity in predominantly white work environments. The 4 themes, joy, pain, freedom, love, came about quite organically through plenty of brainstorming and doodling, as our sister co-editor Camilla would say. And we landed on capturing the overlapping emotions we experienced working in fundraising and charitable environments. It reveals our aspirations and the hope with which we come to the work, the ups and downs, the hurt, the determination and persistence, the growth and courage. For many of the book's contributors, this was the first time they were publicly sharing and documenting their stories, with every keystroke leaving an indelible mark. Everyone wrote independently with the freedom to share whatever story they wished. Other than we, the co-editors, contributors were unaware of what others were writing or the themes they were writing under until shortly before the book's release. The stories are different, but the thread that holds the narratives together is the impact of the experiences. We lived and continue to live it, and all contributors stepped forward to illuminate it, the being anti-Black racism. Our accounts bear witness to our experiences, and by documenting them, we claim, elevate, and validate Black voices. The narratives are unfiltered and show how we experience the sector as designed by the standards that govern it.
We believe context is critical to understanding people's stories. I had the pleasure of writing the introduction to Collecting Courage, which is vital in understanding the realities and unique oppressions of Black people. Context plays a significant role in helping us appreciate and accurately analyze the stories of others. Many aspects of history have been erased to prevent or to preserve white superiority. And so in the North American charitable sector, it is also vital to understand the context shared at the beginning of our book to make meaning of the racial injustice we see, hear, and or experience around us. And so I share with you a short excerpt from the introduction as a way for us to set the context in this space today. Few Canadians know that there were 200 years of slavery in Canada at the same time slavery was raging in the southern part of the continent. In 1834, the Slave Abolition Act ended slavery in the British colonies, including Canada. Contextually then, the 49th parallel was established 12 years after the end of slavery in Canada and 19 years before the American Civil War ended slavery in America. Thus, during the heyday of slavery in North America, American and Canadian slaveholding families, French and English, moved freely back and forth across the continent with slaves in tow, some compelled by military events and others by residential preference. Families maintained homes and family in both the United States and Canada, a hallmark of the history of many of Canada's notable and wealthy families, many of whom share surnames and family connections with American slaveholders. Both countries were founded by the same people sharing the same cultures. The question then is, why is it that the United States and Canada maintain very distinct reputations and images today? Canada's identity is bound up in an odd and continuous colonial connection to the British monarchy. It aligns itself with the crown as a point of pride and perhaps a matter of reputational necessity. It's a way to strategically distinguish itself from the United States and from a history better known for its massive blood-stained history of slavery. And all the while, large swaths of the Canadian population, not the least of which is Quebec, have maintained no special fondness for the English monarchy. In fact, Canada shares fewer defining elements with Britain than with America. Whether by design or otherwise, the homage to Britain serves to obscure Canada's greater commonality with the United States, past and present. Canada shares the same blood-stained history. The people of Canada share a culture more closely tied, both historically and traditionally, to the United States than to Britain. Why is this important? Because the myths around American and Canadian culture must be demystified to examine through the writings in this book, the experiences of Black professionals in the charitable sectors of both countries. This is significant because the national context in the Canadian American fundraisers live and work are more similar than not. And to fully honor and digest the stories shared in this book, we must begin by examining the fiction in both national narratives, specifically dispel the myths that Canada is historically and socially superior, and that Black people are better off in Canada. The charitable sector is a microcosm of the national culture. Now let's just turn our minds to the power of narratives. The collection of stories that is Collecting Courage represents the power of narratives, which Nicole mentioned a couple of minutes ago, both individually and collectively. Stories are everywhere, and whose stories we hear matter. Stories are much more than a book or a narrative. They are the way our minds make sense of our lives in the world. We work at understanding events and people by constructing stories to interpret what is occurring around us. In turn, these stories create our views of the world and the lens through which we construct meaning about ourselves and others. We also tell stories to make connections, form relationships, create community. Christian Mehta, a fundraising leader at Toronto Metropolitan University and one of Collecting Courage's reviewers, wrote, "Collecting Courage is the first and only book that is brave enough to expose the poison that pervades our institutions and invites everyone to rebuild a sector that sees its own truth and potential." We believe stories of the past are particularly significant in framing our thinking about the world. Milton Metzler, the author of many nonfiction history books on social issues, argues that history is memory, consisting of stories about our past that provide us with a sense of humanity. Without these stories of the past, we are nothing, adrift, and unable to compare and contrast our current experiences with the past to make sense of these experiences. We are locked into the current moment, deprived of memory, and so blinded from understanding the present moment. Metzler argues that governments in totalitarian countries thus outlaw the collective memory. In our society, we neglect it, and so fail to see ourselves as a part of a larger continuum of life that stretches far behind us and far ahead as well. We need stories of the past to locate ourselves and to envision a reason to take action for social change, to create a better world. Without the stories of the past, we are unable to see the possibility of change. Sonia Sanchez, the phenomenal poet, wrote, "I write to tell the truth about the Black condition as I see it. Therefore, I write to offer a Black woman's view of the world." As meaning-making beings, we're driven to make sense of our world and capture it in memory as stories. As fundraisers, we are storytellers who communicate the awesome impact that generosity can have. Stories, you see, they bypass our analytical brain and enter the gray matter. This is the part of the brain that affects behavior, like giving. As fundraisers, we are always seeking behavior change, and as Black fundraisers, we are also seeking the change of racial justice. Our stories are needed so we can connect with and understand the truth of what's happening to us and around us. Only through our stories are the gates to our liberation opened for equity and justice to advance.
So let's turn our attention from the power of narratives to the validity of our narratives. Andrea Collier wrote, "No matter who you are or where you come from, the human spirit not only wants, but needs to be validated. It helps us to make meaning of the world and our place in it." Stories have been told since even before humans learned to read and write. Storytelling is timeless and a part of every culture. It serves many roles. It entertains, informs, and passes along cultural traditions and values. Black folks from across the diaspora come from a rich oral storytelling tradition. Picture this. In many parts of Africa, after dinner, the village congregates around a central fire to listen to the storyteller. As in other cultures, including those across the Americas, North, Central, and South, the role of the storyteller is to entertain, educate, and serve as the cultural adhesive to the passing on of important traditions and wisdom. As Anika said, as fundraisers, we know the importance of stories. Stories connect, stories stick, and stories have the power to make us reflect, inspire, and move us in some way. Hopefully to take action, and of course, in the case of our donors, ultimately spur them into donating and investing in the services we offer. Stories have found their way into every aspect of the work we do in the sector. For example, a long-held practice has been a heavy reliance on numerical data to evaluate and report on a program's impact. Today, metrics include stories of impact as valid sources of data. By documenting our stories, these first-person narratives are valid and primary source data. So back in the spring of 2021, Ozzie Michelin, a Labrador Inuk journalist, wrote a first-person piece for CBC News on why it's important for Indigenous people to tell their own stories. In it, he writes, "For centuries, the humanity of Indigenous people has been hidden behind stereotypes, myths, and prejudices. Indigenous voices have long been silenced, only allowed to be heard when deemed valid by the expert, like a priest, scientist, politician, or bureaucrat." He goes on further to state that even before Canada became a country, colonialism weaponized stories about Indigenous people. These were used to scare settlers into thinking we were dirty, dangerous, and drunk, not to be trusted or deserving of empathy. These stories made settlers feel contempt for the Indigenous people surviving colonialism. The point Ozzie Michelin is making is that the voice of the insider, the person who lives the experience, will tell a different story. They will have a view that's valid and important, and one that reminds us that the voices that shape the narrative do matter. Let's briefly explore why the voice telling the story is an important consideration. For centuries, the prevailing and dominant narratives about Black, Indigenous, and people of color have been told and shaped by voices other than our own. In the absence of their voices, a caricature of them emerges that is stereotyped, distorted, and fabricated. Positioned as truth and therefore reality, these stories have become the engine that feeds oppressive and particularly self-serving systems controlled by those who hold positions of power and stand to benefit the most. In 2009, acclaimed Nigerian writer Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie gave a TED Global talk titled "The Danger of a Single Story," where she stated that stories too are defined by the principle of Nkale. How they're told, who tells them, when they're told, and how many stories are told are really dependent on power. Power is the ability not just to tell the story of another person, but to make it the definitive story of that person. The person who tells the story has the power and opportunity to shape the narrative. In shaping the narrative, they can control the message. If you control the message, you can influence what people see, hear, think, and feel, and how they behave. Ultimately, you can mold someone's perception of reality and what they come to accept as truth. Often, the framing of the story is one-dimensional, the only view of the story, which, if repeated enough times, become the default, the standard, the generally accepted reality. In this environment, the emergence of an alternate narrative and picture is not impossible, but is quite difficult. To correct that distortion demands determination and desire, imagination and hope, and most of all, a deep love that change is possible, that things can and must be different. It demands courage to tell the stories, courage to hear the stories, and definitely courage to be active and engaged agents in ushering change. All collecting courage or contributors understood the opportunity to shape the narrative by documenting our truths about working in the sector. Who better to unapologetically and courageously tell our stories than us. My contribution to collecting courage is a poem called Come Take a Walk with Me. The particular verses I'm about to share speaks about the conditions under which systemic racism is sustained and allowed to flourish. And the supplication here is that there is another path we can choose to take. 'Tis pain and hurt unveiled, a sector holding closely to its charitable roots, doing good deeds and serving those in most need, outwardly facing, on surface appearing, all compassion and caring, purity and goodness overflowing. But alas, that veneer is peeling. The story that's been told is incomplete. Curtain call reveals secrets concealed, underbelly of injustices born on branches. Supremacy of whiteness has taken firm root, even here. This verse speaks to me as if tucked away in the abyss of me, as if sucked into every cell and fiber of me. These words captivate and speak to me, because it's who I am and aspire to be. 'Tis pain and hurt, break. A reckoning well overdue. Now is the time for heeding advice. Truth be told, the system impotent can do no harm or deliver blows without its enablers, defenders, and those in comfort of complacency's arms. 'Cause as surely as it hurts others, it's bamboozled, self-anointed belongers, planting seeds of hatred, sprouting white superiority instead of seeds of equity and our shared humanity. Oppression and exploitation doesn't have to be our final destination. This verse speaks to me as if tucked away in the abyss of me, as if sucked into every cell and fiber of me. These words captivate and speak to me, because it's who I am and aspire to be. So let's turn our minds to the power of narrative, and we're going to have a discussion. Regardless of the form or shape it takes, stories have the power to transcend the boundaries, stir the imagination, forge connections, and crumble seemingly impenetrable barriers. As someone who has spent years working in and with INGOs, I know there has been discussions, questions, and concerns raised about how the people and communities served are depicted. Are the images, words, and stories we tell doing a disservice by stripping people of their dignity? Are we upholding, reinforcing, and perpetrating dangerous stereotypes about the communities?
The activity we have planned next is for those of us today and those watching this recording later. We ask those participants watching this on demand to answer the following questions before our session, our live session at Convene Canada on Thursday, May 23rd. This activity will prepare you for the truth-telling and narrative writing we will be doing together in that workshop. Okay, so for those who are watching this recording, we want you to respond to these two questions in a journal. Based on what we have shared here today about the power and validity of narratives and whose voice shape narratives, what narratives do you have the responsibility to tell? And how should these narratives be told? We also encourage you to read some examples of truth-telling. Maybe start with our book that has 14 stories that demonstrate truth-telling. And if you don't have the book, you can visit our website at collectingcourage.org and go to Our Stories. And there you will find other stories, including one I wrote called Us and Them, What It Really Means to Belong. It details my experience along with two other former Black board members of the AFP Greater Toronto chapter and our experiences with anti-Blackness while serving on that board. I'll be sharing more about that experience in part 2 of this session. And so for those who are watching this on demand, we want to thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you on May 23rd in Vancouver.